Ah yes, Arkham Asylum. This game is quite simply pretty damn awesome. Most people who play this seem to think so as well, and rightfully so. Although during this game's release I wasn't expecting too much from a Batman game. Why? The main reason being was that superhero games had a tendency to be pretty bad. Yes, for some reason, playing a superhero game typically made you feel like the only reason why it existed was to simply make a quick buck. And of course, there is the dishonorable piece of crap known as Superman for the Nintendo 64. Yes, that game didn't help matters. I just do not have the words for this one. There is no combination of drugs on Earth that can explain why anyone would think making, let alone releasing, this to the world would be a good idea. It seems some men really do want to watch the world burn. Maybe I'll talk about this another day. Back to Arkham. Now another reason for this game being treated very cautiously upon its release is that Batman is simply just such an iconic character. He's been part of the superhero culture for the longest time, and people have formed this idea in their head of what he is supposed to be. Because of this, any new take on a Batman game is going to be heavily scrutinized. Thankfully, it was announced that Kevin Conroy would be voicing the Batman, and Mark Hamill would be voicing the Joker. Arlene Sorkin as Harley too. Sorry if I butchered that name. Now I'm sure most of you already know these people lent their voices to the animated series of Batman, which is considered by many to be the best incarnation of Batman, and naturally generated a whole lot of attention and buzz, although fans were still kind of cautious to an extent. Even with these voice actors, people weren't really totally sure what to expect. After all, this is not an animated series, but a video game. One more thing, Batman was pretty big at the time. I mean, he still is now, but The Dark Knight was only a year old when this game was released. That movie is now 8 years old. Jesus, how they grow up so fast. Yes, The Dark Knight raised the bar for superhero movies, and that meant that the games that you would usually see would simply look that much more worse by comparison. Arkham Asylum has nothing to do with The Dark Knight, the movie, so it'll be fair to assume that this game might revolve around the animated show. But no, not really. Despite the voice actors being present in this game is pretty much its own thing. So what is Arkham Asylum about then? Well, the story is actually very, very simple. You know, the game begins with Batman taking Joker to Arkham. He manages to bust out thanks to a cop that is secretly working for him, and he takes over the asylum. Yes, it was all part of Joker's plan. Yeah, it's all part of the plan. And of course, it's up to Batman to stop him. That's really it. The intro is actually pretty cool. It sets up the tone and atmosphere for this game very nicely. It's just Batman and the police escorting Joker to the cells, while Joker, as usual, talks shit.
Would you sneak in with your bats? Come on, tell me. Batarangs, bat claws, ooh, bat snacks.
Batman is suspicious from the get-go, and becomes more and more paranoid the closer you get to the cells, and overall it's a good build up to the moment where you know that the shit is gonna hit the fan. Although some have criticized this intro for being a little bit too long, to me it kinda reminds me of the intro to Half-Life, where you're on a tram going through Black Mesa, and it kinda just goes on and on. Admittedly, this is what it feels like, but like I said, it's done well, so I really didn't mind. Now the game pretty much throws you right into the fighting system, and for what it's worth, it's actually done quite well. The controls are very easy and simplistic, and you don't have to think about what button you have to push while you're fighting. You just fight and kick some ass. Yes, the counter animations blend in well with the attack animations, and for the most part, not always, it all looks quite fluid when strung together. Now you can button mash if you want, but this game does encourage you to build up a combo streak, which you do by tapping the attack and counter button more strategically instead of just mashing it. Now when you build up your combo high enough, it allows you to do some more additional moves like throws and takedowns, etc. These moves help keep the fighting more interesting throughout the game, as opposed to just seeing punches and kicks all the time. Although I do find it a little bit strange how you're completely outnumbered almost all the time, and instead of all of them attacking you at once, they kinda just wait their turn. Well, sometimes the ones that wait their turn actually go find a weapon like a steel pipe or a gun, which is kinda cool. But yeah, most of the time, the guys that are waiting their turn will just stand around like complete idiots. You can use your gadgets during the fight too, such as batarangs and grapple guns, to stun bad guys. It works well, and it looks awesome. Your gadgets work really well when you're heavily outnumbered, and when almost all the bad guys are holding guns. When they're all holding guns, it's the only time they aren't standing around like idiots. which means you can't always run or glide into the middle of a party and beat everybody up. If they all have guns, then you're most likely going to get fucked up. Now this is the part of the game where you kind of need to think about things a little bit. You can grapple up to the ceilings or go under the floors and pick off guys one by one, and you really feel like Batman doing this. And for me, it was one of the most fun aspects of the game. For some reason, there are statues of gargoyles placed near the ceiling of almost every room, it seems. You can hide up there while you decide your next course of action. You can throw batarangs from up there to distract them, or glide off and kick people in the face, or just string them up and let them hang, which is very satisfying.
Come on, wake up!
Get off me!
Now, if you want, you can also use a remote to detonate explosive gels, which you can spray anywhere, which is also one of my favorite things to do. Now, the enemies do eventually catch on to your tactics, and they will create countermeasures later on in the game, which makes it more harder to take them out, which is good. It shakes things up a bit and helps keep it interesting. Now, unfortunately, there are not many types of enemies to fight. It's mainly just the same old goons over and over again. Now, there are some big-ass guys that you can take on, and they are more of a challenge, but you fight one near the beginning of the game. After that, beating these big fuckers is pretty straightforward. There are bosses every now and then that do present a different type of challenge, so I am not really complaining too much. You do have Scarecrow, who isn't very intimidating, but he is interesting. At least I thought so. And trying to beat him is unique compared to the other villains, thanks to his hallucinogenic drug. Although you do have to do this part where you're tripping balls and you have to sneak up on Scarecrow several times throughout the game. And some people did not like doing that multiple times, which is understandable. But again, it didn't take long to do, and again, it mixed things up, at least a little bit, as you didn't always find yourself running down the hallway or a corridor like you do quite a lot in this game. In fact, the scenes where Batman is tripping balls is actually one of the more memorable scenes in this game for me. So overall, Scarecrow definitely makes this game less boring. You actually have a fair amount of main villains in this game, with the likes of Joker, Harley, Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, and you even have the Riddler. Although you never actually see the Riddler in this game, he constantly talks to you through your headset. Honestly, I imagine this is what hearing voices in your head feels like, because sometimes he just doesn't shut up. Anyway, he plants trophies, for a lack of a better word, all around the island in the shape of question marks no less, and there are hundreds of these things. And you can spend hours and hours finding them all. Not only that, but he gives you riddles to solve throughout the game. They're usually something to do with the environment. Maybe it would pertain to a painting or a photo on the desk or something. It's definitely interesting to try and figure them all out, initially that is. I always became way too bored trying to find these things, and the stupid question marks, just trying to figure all this shit out, was way too boring for me, eventually. I do have to say. But for the people that do like these kind of things, it will present somewhat of a challenge, as it does force you to think a little bit outside the box at times, and it encourages you to shift your perspective. Keep that in mind. I am not going to talk about all the villains here, as I really didn't find Killer Croc or even Poison Ivy to be very interesting. Seriously, Killer Croc has this giant shock collar on his neck pretty much the whole game, and the trick with him is to not make any noise while you're in the sewers. But it doesn't matter because you can use your zip glider thingy to get around very quickly without making a noise anyway. And when he does show up, you just use your batarang to shock his ass back into the water. There is a button to quick throw the batarang, and it always lands where you want it to without even aiming. Most of the time at least. Honestly, I almost felt bad for Killer Croc while I was in the sewers. I don't really know what Killer Croc was like in the comic books, but in here, beating him was just way too easy.
This color off. It keeps going on.
Poison Ivy looks great, but she was very boring. She is important to the main story, but still, she is just so boring that she kind of felt like filler. She doesn't have much screen time overall, so dealing with her wasn't so bad. Speaking of things that look great, this whole game just looks great. I love all the effort that the creators put into this game. Not just in this game itself, but in the menus too, where you can unlock plenty of character bios and artworks and view galleries and things of that nature. Even the drawings in the upgrade system, and they do contribute to the tone of this game. You get experience points from beating people up, and even the little things, such as destroying those Joker teeth, get you experience too. So yeah, fuck shit up as much as you can, and this game will reward you for it. You can upgrade your fighting techniques too, and your gadgets and your armor as well. I think the graphics are pretty damn good, especially for the time. The graphics have certainly aged after all this time, but they still hold up for me, for the most part at least. Unfortunately, there are a number of things in the background that do have poor textures and just overall look very pixelated even. It's just weird to me to see things look this bad in a game which looks just this good. Now, there is a remake being made for this game, so I really do hope they address these issues. The sound is awesome. Everything sounds like it should, and the voice actors, my god, are so good. You can tell that they put their hearts into the voice acting, and it really brings the game to life, so to speak. Now, one of my favorite parts is when you're trying to figure out how to take down the bad guys one by one, and Joker is on the intercom and is just talking shit to the guys while they're all being picked off.
He's up top in the treetops, and the flying roof we know he is. It looks like he's left you a gift up there!
If nothing else, this game is worth playing just to hear Mark Hamill be the Joker. You can collect tapes and parts of the maps, and these tapes are audio interviews. Audio interviews with the Joker, Harley, Ivy, etc. I found them all quite interesting to listen to. It builds on the character development. It gives you yet another reason to search high and low in every nook and cranny of this game's map. Okay, now to talk about the detective mode. This mode lets you see right through walls, and you can see people's skeletons too, just like an X-ray. This mode is basically your best friend when it comes to creating a plan for taking out multiple enemies, and it just looks freaking cool. You can turn it on and off at will, although if you want you can just leave it on all the time. Although I don't recommend this because if you do this then you will miss out on a lot of the art and the graphics, but if you want to leave it on all the time, go for it. Okay, now the main complaint with detective mode is that A, it makes the game too easy, and B, it makes Batman feel as if he has an actual superpower. Well, to address A, if it makes the game too easy, just don't use it, and B, I can actually see where they're coming from. Now, seeing through walls is something that Superman usually does. In fact, I got this screen cap of the TV show called Smallville where Clark looks right through the wall, and it looks extremely similar. Hell, even the sound effect used in that show is the very same one used in this game. Although, to be fair, there are different incarnations of Batman in which Batman has used a very similar type of device to practically do the same thing. Now, since X-rays and echolocation technology actually does exist, if you ask me, Lucius Fox would find a way to jam all that into Batman's suit, since that's exactly what he does. I'm gonna give this a pass and say that it's plausible, just because it's freaking Batman. This mode gives the game another layer of awesomeness, and it just looks really freaking cool. There aren't many bad things, but the bad things are that this game's main story is very, very simple. Simple doesn't always mean bad, but in this case, it wouldn't have hurt just to add a little bit more to it, I wouldn't think. And for everything you can do in this game, it is actually quite a linear type of game to play. It is also quite repetitive at times. Now, it won't take you very long to beat. I won't give away the ending, but it didn't exactly blow me away. But for what it's worth, overall, I was very satisfied with this game. I certainly got to feel like the Batman, and considering this was the first Batman game for Rocksteady, they sure as hell hit the nail on the head, which is impressive. The creators are obviously huge fans of Batman. This game did spawn a sequel called Arkham City, which improved on much of the problems that I had with Arkham Asylum, and if you want me to review that, let me know. And maybe follow me on Twitter and Facebook to contact me there or to see updates and shit, and if you like these videos very much, please consider perhaps supporting me on Patreon too. It would help tremendously. Thank you for watching.